unlock the augmented reality side, right, of the metaverse, like the physical side. I mean, what, you're going to stop everyone that's wearing Adidas from going into, virtual Adidas from going into Nike? Like, exactly.
What about you, Andrew? How would you even begin to convince the fashion brands that you work with to do interoperable?
I mean, this is very complicated.
I know, right?
It's not about the technology. I think technology will get there and make it everything possible. But it's more of a, building consensus agreement amongst all parties, right? So for us, if we have to also get a right permission from brands first, see if they want to get into other metaverse projects, and see if the other metaverse is, it just fits well with what brands it sees and believes. So, and at the same time, we have to have a right agreement with other metaverse operators to make it interoperable. So it requires a lot of kind of agreement, building a consensus. And the technology is the next thing, you can make it happen. So yeah, I mean that's going to be the biggest challenge. So we don't make it automatically all interoperable. It's upon only an agreement and consensus by all parties.
And to that point, advice to any brand here or any creator: whenever you sign, I've seen some contracts that ask for exclusivity when it comes to NFTs or creators. Be very careful. Right, you're signed. You could be, in the olden days, like the starlets and stars used to sign away literally their lives to be used in any media, and that was. I feel like that's happening as well. Be very careful as a brand. I mean, you're obviously getting advice legally, but go through it with a fine-tooth comb. See if there's anything about exclusivity, about future media creators as well. I've seen, and you've seen it too. I know, like horror stories. If we want true interoperability, like, you cannot be locked into an exclusivity deal, in my perspective. So
I 100% agree, 100%.
yeah, well, I know you saved a brand from something like that, so.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, panel, for that very important discussion, actually. So I'm happy we got into the details of that. So if we were to zoom out a little bit from the protocol and just thinking about advising brands, advising creators on how to create effective commercial experience. Cathy, you have seen so much of the future. I mean, your company is a futures intelligence group. You work with so many brands, you see so many possibilities with different technology development. So my question for you, and please be honest here, what is your critical assessment of the state of fashion experience in the metaverse? Do they excite you thoroughly, or do they and are there opportunities that you think brands should have tapped in more often to kind of make an effective experience?
Yeah, I mean, do I spend all day in virtual fashion? No, right? I think they're getting better. One of the biggest challenges is, and I'm sure both of you guys see this, is when you have the brand come to you and say, I want to do X, and you're like, well, there's only so much I can do in Roblox Studio, right? Or so much I can do on Fortnite Creative. There's that point of friction where the reality of what you want to see is not really what the tools allow, right? So the technology is eventually going to catch up. We build lots of worlds. We're doing beautiful work in a lot of these platforms, but there is sometimes that limitation, right? And we're working with the platforms to make sure that things get better for fashion. So I would say that's one of the things. And then one of the big things that I've noticed, I work with two types of brands. Either the brands that went all in on Web 2 and are super culturally relevant, and they want to stay relevant, right? They understand their role, and they want to be part of Web 3. Or I have brands that didn't go into Web 2, and now they're like, oh, what is this Web 3 thing? And they're trying to leapfrog, right? And they're very eager and very hungry, and that's really exciting. But it's really kind of repositioning yourself as a brand. It's an exciting time. That's what I tell them. It's an exciting time to be a brand, to rethink. Just because you sell detergent in the physical world doesn't mean you have to sell detergent in the virtual world, right? You can keep selling for physical detergent. Keep doing that if it's profitable. But yeah, I think it's reevaluating. Like, even the people that how many of you guys work here inside brands? Like big brands, there's a couple of you guys. I bet you, and many of you guys are gonna nod, there's a renewed excitement from the teams, the innovation teams, the marketing teams, the design teams, on thinking about like, wow, this new world of possibilities. So I think it's an opportunity. There are challenges, but working with the right people, and yeah, understanding that the technology is gonna catch up. It's not all perfect. And then really, I do mean this. This is advice. I know it sounds futuristic, but starting to think about what does your company or your brand do when we move from cell phones into glasses? And I do mean that wholeheartedly.
On the same question, but maybe through the lens of fashion NFT, Marjorie, because you have the dematerialized, you launch so many projects with impressive brands when it comes to their NFTs. What do you think about the state of fashion NFTs?
I'm really proud of the work that the Dematerialized does. I think we do kind of like have the right like set of values from the get-go, and I do think we're doing, as good as can be done today. I think in terms of experience, of course, there's a lot of challenges, and I think the picture that always comes to mind is when the MIT kids in the 80s were like creating VR headsets, and they were just basically walking around with like TVs stuck to their heads. It's a little bit like that right now, right? Like obviously we have that vision for the future, and of course we are all excited about technology, and we love technology, and we know that it might be glitchy today, it might not look perfect, but it will get there. And as Andy was saying, it's just a matter of time that the technology gets there. So I think it's the beauty of it is that we are just like at the very, very beginning. If the NFT is done right? If the identity of the NFT and the standards behind the NFT are done right, you can upgrade your product through time, right? And so your NFT doesn't necessarily will ever get old. And even if you have like a very old 2021 digital fashion NFT, it might be in the future still super cool, and you will have whatever you need in order to access those places of experience. So that is something that Luxo works pretty hard on. It's like making sure that we give creators and users the power around the smart contracts. So I think if we can't forget, like NFTs are little computer programs, right? Like we're buying little computer programs, and they will behave like computer programs, and computer programs can upgrade. So it will get better. So I think collect your NFTs, make sure that they're done the right way, and you should be good to go in the future.
And to that point, NFTs and DAOs are long-term commitments. That's what everyone needs to understand as well. So I agree.
Yeah, I agree. NFT is not a product. To us, yes, NFTs are more of a service, and which will be constantly upgraded, as Marjorie said, and then constantly the new utilities can be attached to it. So it's more of I think to us, it's a service rather than final goods or selling products.
Very interesting. For the last segment of our panel, I do want to move us to, I think it's an important and equally exciting in a way, discussions, which are the societal influences of fashions in the metaverse. I think we have so far discussed a lot of exciting opportunity for fashion in the metaverse when it comes to providing new opportunities for expressions and just more novel forms of expressive interactions. But I think simultaneously, as fashion brands enter the metaverse, they also risk bringing inside the metaverse some of the existing social issues that comes with the metaverse that exist in the physical world. In the past years, we've heard reports of, kids being cyberbullied because they don't have the means to purchase an expensive skin in a video game, right? Recently, we've heard report of physical abuse inside metaverse. Content moderations continue to be a problem with these platforms. So I guess my question is, given these very real challenges, what are your advice for brands and creators who are looking to launch a fashion experience in the metaverse to be able to do so effectively, yes, but also without bringing into the metaverse some of the baggage of its fashion physical past? And I would love to hear from all of the panelists.
Yeah, definitely. I've been in the metaverse industries for almost 8 years. Did a lot of work in VR, and have myself been harassed, sexually harassed actually in a virtual space. I don't normally talk about it, but yeah, it is a weird experience, and I carry it with me. But I think that whenever I work with the companies and the brands, I say, if you're creating a world a virtual world in any of these platforms, don't just think that you're going to build it, make it look pretty. You need to staff it up. You need to have people in there, whether they're mods or whatever it is that you're, whether it's your moderators in your Discord server, whether it is people that, that work inside, inside your Roblox world or whatever it is, you need to have people there, right? Because the last thing you want is for eventually someone to write an article like, oh, I was harassed in so-and-so's fashion world, right? That's exactly what you don't want. You want to keep your community safe, and you want to make sure you have to do all you can to set up those safeguards. And then another thing, I think every company that's entering the space needs to take a deep look and say, if I am going to be launching, things for avatars, start to look anthropologically, right, at the questions. Like, is creating this, if avatars become our emotional surrogates, and they already are for a lot of people, what does that mean? Right? Does it change, does it give them a chance to explore identities, which many, that's the very hopeful part, but does it also maybe have them not enjoy their physical self as much because they can, escape into a virtual avatar? So I think it's a combination of things, and that's nothing new. I mean, a lot of people have kind of analyzed that, but now that we're going further into this, level, thinking about that. And then another big thing, and this is actually a signal that I gave to Amy Webb last year, and she talked about it at South by Southwest, was diminished reality. I worry about the fact when we move from phones to glasses, and I can erase things I do not like or people I do not like, what that can do to society and humanity. So anthropologically, the brands need to also look in and figure out, what are we doing? How are we protecting our community as well if we ask them to enter the space with us?
Thank you so much, Cathy. Marge?
Super cool answer. I think, a lot of these problems are human problems, right? Like being bullied, like we all, some sort of experience as kids, you didn't have the sneakers or the watch or whatever. So I think those are like bigger conversations that we as a society still need to answer in whatever reality dimension we're hanging out. But I think, one thing that and I really don't have an answer for this. I think I will echo everything that Cathy says in terms of like, you have to be very aware, and you also have to be very aware that the ethos and that your brand stands for what culture is and should be in the future. But I think what we can do is like learn from things that have worked really well in technology. And I think one of the cool things about blockchain technology, and the reason why blockchain decentralized networks work, is because they have an incentive mechanism in which everybody's winning. So everybody's acting from a selfish kind of like intent and still winning and benefiting everybody. So I think if we can think about these spaces in terms of like creating right incentives for every participant and incentivizing right behavior and good behavior, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. So I think Andy, with his game knowledge, potentially can contribute a lot with his company. But I think, it's just about creating the right sets of incentives. And I think, it's not about canceling people. A good friend told me the other day he wants to live in a society where nobody gets crude and nobody gets nailed or something. And I thought it was a really good use of the English language. So I think, we just have to make sure that we are being sensitive. And I think one of the ways to achieve a safer environment is that the teams that are creating those projects and those products are multidisciplinary, across countries, across age groups, across genders, is super, super important. And I think, one of the kind of like the toxic things that we know from like internet companies, venture capital stuff, came because it was a very specific group of people behind it. So the more participants we have with different point of views, I think the higher chances we have to have a super cool result.
Just look at this panel. I mean, this is a start. Right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much for that answer, Marjorie. Andrew, what's your point of view on this?
Yeah, recently the chairman of LVMH, Arnault, said that they're not interested in selling LVMH fashion, virtual items for $10 or less, right? I think probably he thinks it's not really helping preserving the brand value. It's just maybe perhaps too cheap. But at the same time, that same $10 is normally super high price for as a game item for all gamers out there. So I think there's inherently there's a kind of a pricing gap existing today between the suppliers, sellers and buyers. But I think I think there's been constant kind of a struggle, right, to make right balance between, like you said, scarcity versus availability, right? The exclusivity versus mass, but at the same time, I think we all have a kind of a same goal, at least within the metaverse, that is is to democratize fashion to be available, accessible for everybody, but while preserving the brand value. So how do we do that? I think that's a big challenge. I think again the focus should be on more of an experience rather than monetizations. For example, building a virtual shop with a completely defined virtual experience. The different ways to display, showcase, or building the try-on service within the metaverse. Whether people buy anything there or not, it's not really important. Just having those kind of experience available broadens its reach to people, and also even for the NFTs, it should not be just only for with your credit cards, right? You can build virtual items, NFTs, based on people's action, activities, and experience, right? So without spending the necessary credit card, so everybody has an equal access and chance to obtain that kind of a virtual asset and NFTs without again making a purchase, and while still achieving this scarcity. And again, the community also makes a big parts of it, and it's, I think Cathy said, having the right presence and constantly speaking on a real-time basis with your community, and community themselves becoming policing force within the metaverse community can prevent these kind of activity. I think, but for sexual harassment, I'm not sure what we can do, but at least we can speak about what we do at Altava. So we certainly simply block all the certain words. So simply you can't type F words when you communicate with other people. For all interactive motions, animations can be only based on the permission base. So unless the other party accepts it, you cannot hug. You can high five the components. So I think I think again, metaverse today as a latest news channels which completes the omnichannel experience, and there are many things can be done, but again, focusing more on experience rather than monetization should be a key.
I think what sort of gives me hopes and sort of incredibly grounded common thread in all of your answers that I personally really relate to is, I think the importance of recognizing that these social issues are inherently human created, right? It's a human problem, and there are a lot of things technologies can do to mitigate, but I think technology alone can never solve problems that are created by humans. And in building these experiences, recognizing the human factors in all of them is so important, especially in a world where reality is further abstractized and digitized, right? And then sometimes when you interact with an avatar, you forgot that there's a person behind that, for example. Then I think what I took away from me, for example, is to making sure that there's a human in all of this, and the human factor is incredibly important in a world that is increasingly virtual and digital. And thank you so much for all of your answers. So actually this is the end of our panel, but before we conclude the panel, I would love if you could all maybe take a round and share with the audience where everyone can find you online, learn more about your work, and learn more about the metaverse at large.
So you can find me as Cathy Hackl across social. LinkedIn is definitely where I share most of my knowledge. If you're interested in my book, you can go to metaversebook.com and pre-order there. And also be on the lookout. I'm going to be launching a community called People of the Metaverse. There is an NFT component, but that's not the only thing. And we're hopefully going to be having a 500-person cocktail with the philosophers of today, the Web3 and Metaverse philosophers, in the Paris Opera in November. So it's going to be super exciting. Yes.
Thank you, Cathy.
So good. Yeah, you guys can find Luxo everywhere, in Discord, in Twitter, in Instagram. We try to answer, we do our best. It's LUKSO. And then you can also find the Dematerialized, which is spelled with an S because it's an UK-based company. And also Discord, Twitter, and Instagram. So.
Yeah, Altava, it's an alternative avatar in short. You can find also us, in Discord, Telegram, Medium, and Twitters. And we have altava.io, specifically designated for our the token and NFTs that we're selling. Also altava.com as a main website. And you can find me in LinkedIn. And Altava Worlds of You is coming to this part of the world around May, so you can directly access and hopefully I can meet you within our metaverse going forward.
Thank you so much, panelists, for being here, for your critical thoughts and advice. I really enjoyed it, and that was your Future of Fashion in the Metaverse panel. Thank you for being here and listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your festival.
Thank you.